What's up, RotoGrinders? Welcome to another edition of Fanduel Friday, talking some NBA. My name is TJ Zwarich, wearing my Fanduel t-shirt, ready to dive into this 10-game slate, joined by my friend, co-worker, RG analyst, scores and odds aficionado, Justin Carlucci. How you doing?
TJ, I'm good. Another Friday. These weeks are flying by. I feel like every day we're doing these videos. So we got another fun slate with a lot of injury news, and there's going to be some chalk in some certain places, and we're going to break it down.
Yeah, wild slate here. First off, let's switch the screen share over to FanDuel since you got DraftKings pulled up there. But like you mentioned, 10-game slate, lots of injuries, some that we're still waiting on. Like, obviously, we got some Atlanta chalk with no DeJounte Murray, no Clint Capella, but we are still waiting a lot, especially when it comes to Golden State and Minnesota. We got Rudy Gobert and D'Angelo Russell questionable. We got Draymond Green and Klay Thompson questionable to go on top of the already out Steph Curry in that game. So we got a lot to break down. We're not going to go game by game. We're going to talk about this as a general strategy output. But the first thing we got to talk about is Atlanta. 50% owned Onyeka Okongwu. Not like he's sitting there at 3K, but he's still a phenomenal play. And then we have Trae Young pushing in over 30, maybe getting close to 40% owned as well. Before we look at this slate as a whole, how do you want to handle this Atlanta chalk?
Well, you want to find a way to mitigate some of that ownership. And I'll tell you what my favorite way is for tournaments, if you're multi-entering. And even if you're not, find a safer route. This team they're playing, the Charlotte Hornets, I mean, don't look now, but they have the highest team total on the board. And I know it gets a little murky with Gordon Hayward potentially working his way back in. As you can see, we have him projected for 22 minutes. And, of course, LaMelo Ball jumps back in and plays over 30 minutes, no issue. I like having a run back here. P.J. Washington, Mason Plumlee's a little priced up, but he's been playing great. Oubre's like no ownership whatsoever. And even Rozier will have his spike games, even with LaMelo. I like the idea for large field tournaments. I think there's going to be an outlier game out of someone here on Charlotte. You know, I'm not willing to take the chance on a PJ Washington or a Mason Plumlee in a straight up high stakes single entry. But if you're loading up 75 to 150 teams, you know, I think it's really interesting running it back with someone who's coming in at projected less than 1% with a team total over 120, TJ.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that makes a lot of sense. I like LaMelo Ball as a run back too, even though he is going to be somewhat chalky in this spot. But if I'm running 150, I'm definitely including Terry Rozier in my pool, PJ Washington in my pool as well. And then on the Atlanta side, somebody like DeAndre Hunter, I think, is somewhat interesting at $5,400. He's picking up the ownership, but it's tough because a lot of these guys have been priced up since they've had players missing time. So outside of Okongwu, Hunter, Young, there's not much that just like stands out as like, this is great value. I can't believe people aren't going here, because the ones that are looking good, people are going there. And then I think on the other side, Ball is your obvious run back, but I like the idea of some PJ Washington, some Rozier as a contrarian run back. We do have some other games at 7 o'clock here and 7:30 that have high totals, close spreads. Sacramento and Detroit is interesting for deep GPPs. Brooklyn and Toronto, very interesting for deep GPPs. And none of the players in that game are kind of really picking up all that much ownership. So I think that's a very interesting spot for tournaments as well. But let's talk about this Golden State situation, because we are now without Stephen Curry. Draymond Green is questionable. Klay Thompson is questionable. We have Dante DiVincenzo projecting as one of the top plays on the slate, picking up lots of ownership. Jordan Poole, to be honest, is just kind of one of my favorite plays on the slate. He's 7-7 right now on FanDuel, 23% ownership we're projecting him for. That is nowhere near enough, in my opinion. He's just as good of a play as these other guys in these spots. And so I love me some Poole today alongside DiVincenzo, and I think Kuminga is a really strong tournament play. What do you think about this Golden State situation?
I agree with you. And I'm definitely pairing DiVincenzo and Poole with someone from the other side. I like that little correlation. Trust me, as a 76ers fan, more oftentimes than not, they do not put teams away. They do not put teams away. I don't know if you watched that Lakers-Sixers game. I think it was last Friday or 2 Fridays ago. when they were up 30 and it came down to one possession game late in the fourth quarter. So the 76ers are another team. This is my non-analytical take. They let the stars kill them and let the peripheral pieces they do it backwards. I think Jordan Poole's going to have a fantastic game. A little bit of revenge narrative here for DiVincenzo, who went to Villanova. So I'm in on Poole with you as well. I'm waiting for some prop lines to come out because I definitely want to see what the odds makers think of Jordan Poole and company here. And you have next to no ownership on James Harden and Joel Embiid. So you know what I'm doing there? I'm definitely pairing, Poole with Embiid or Harden in this situation. Harden's been great since he's come back. He's really distributing at the same time. He's finally finding his vibe with the pick and roll. I feel like he figured it out while he was off the court because the pick and roll between Harden and Embiid has looked electric. So maybe some time off, let Harden do some figuring out how to attack this thing with Joel Embiid. And they're going to be trouble for a lot of teams because, Embiid is a top 5 MVP candidate in the league right now. So I like the idea of correlating here. For Philly, obviously the studs are in play, TJ. Is there anyone else on this team that you keep in your player pool?
Embiid and Harden are two of my favorite tournament plays and tournament spend ups on the slate, but no, I don't think you keep any of these other guys in your player pool. And the reason for that is not to be too hard on you as a 76ers fan here, but Embiid's great. Harden's great. The rest of this team, not that good.
You're right.
DeAnthony Melton is an awesome defender, but like when DeAnthony Melton is your third best player, Tobias Harris, not that strong. And then you don't have a lot of depth behind it. It's not really that second unit is going to be kind of the team, the group that puts people away after you have your 10, 15 point lead in the third quarter with the starters in there. And so I think that's kind of why this game makes such an interesting mini stack. You play your DiVincenzo's, your Poole, maybe even more value if Clay and Green are out as well. And then you run it back here with a Harden or an Embiid on the other side. Because it's a 15-game slate, there's like so much here that we're not going to be able to touch on very in-depth. New York and Chicago, another close spread, another spot with a lot of great tournament options. Zach LaVine projects very well. The New York side has a lot of good tournament options on the other side. Minnesota and OKC is the next game I really want to talk about, though, because even though these last two games, very close spreads, Luka Doncic playing, competitive games, high totals, Nikola Jokic up against the Lakers at 3% ownership in a very high total in a close spread. Anthony Davis been absolutely crushing. Nobody's playing him. So there is a lot exciting late for tournaments as well. But like the biggest talking point of this slate that we still got to touch on is this Minnesota and OKC game, because Karl Anthony Towns is still out. But we got Rudy Gobert questionable and D'Angelo Russell questionable in this one as well. Anthony Edwards would just pop as a phenomenal play if this one can stay close and those two guys are out. But then also Kyle Anderson popping as a phenomenal value play. Naz Reid would all of a sudden look like one of the better value plays on the slate, which like he's coming in at sub 1% owned right now. We may not get this before a lock. We may not. We don't know at this point, but if Gobert's out, I'd rather play Naz Reid than Onyeka Okongwu.
At the ownership discount you'd get him at, that would be a real edge. And I love Okongwu as much as the next person does in the industry today. But there's variance, and he does get handsy sometimes and could get in foul trouble. So just from a raw points perspective and a point per dollar perspective, Naz Reid has 50-point upside. Look at his game log. It's on there. It's not likely, but if Gobert was out and you say, Luch, how many minutes does Naz Reid play? And give me a median projection, I would probably say he plays about conservatively 28 to 29 minutes. And I think he scores at least 30 FanDuel points conservatively again. So I'm with you.
You bump his minutes to 28, and that's still with Russell and Gobert active. And all of a sudden he's projected for the same amount of fantasy points as Onyeka Okongwu in this spot. And so I think he's kind of like the best GPP center on the slate. You just kind of hope that Gobert's out in this one. And even if he's not, you could still get lucky with him and have a solid game there. But I think he makes for a very interesting spot for tournaments. This whole team is very interesting for tournaments, because I think somebody like Jaden McDaniels with his steal block upside could become very interesting if we get Gobert out. Even if he's not out, I think Jaden McDaniels is a very interesting tournament play. Anthony Edwards obviously gets bumped way up. Kyle Anderson is chalk right now, but he's projecting phenomenally. He's been playing very well lately. And something I think is very interesting is Jordan McLaughlin still being out, because I think that's actually huge for Jalen Noel if D'Angelo Russell is out, because Jalen Noel and Jordan McLaughlin kind of just swap back and forth based on who's playing well, who gets the big minutes there off the bench. And I'm not really worried about Bryn Forbes. I'm not really worried about Austin Rivers. If D'Angelo Russell is out, Jalen Noel is one of my favorite guard plays on the slate.
Yeah, good stuff. If you're looking to go to a movie tonight, book the late movie, because you want this 8 o'clock Nasreed news. So
big time. That is something that's going to be like absolutely necessary. We kind of like ripped through this set of games pretty quick, because it really is just those 3 spots that are so crucial to talk about. And until then, we can't really dive too much into this, because there's still tons of players, like specifically in Toronto, Brooklyn, Denver, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Sacramento, Detroit. Like, these games are all so good for tournaments. And so if you're sitting there like, wow, I really like somebody in that game, like I wanted to play some Jamal Murray, some DeMar DeRozan, some Jarrett Allen, stuff like that, and we just haven't mentioned it today. That doesn't necessarily mean they're bad plays. They're probably still very good plays. There's just so much on this slate that it's kind of tough to pinpoint specific spots at this point, especially when we're still waiting for the injuries. So if you're running 150 today, don't be afraid to get overweight on some of these mid-tier plays like a Darius Garland or a Zach LaVine, who are in the 7Ks and have huge ceilings. But then like it's just important to note that like your chalk is going to be those games that we talked about, especially Atlanta. And then your optimal pivots are looking at Golden State and Minnesota. After lock, we don't have that news yet, and they're looking at, based on their injury situations, they could be just as good of plays, if not better, than the Atlanta plays, and hopefully quite a bit less ownership.
Yeah, Darius Garland not shooting the ball well this month, but Indiana plays at a high pace. They don't play a ton of defense, so he's a really interesting large field tournament play. I agree, though. I don't think Poole's carrying enough ownership. I wouldn't be shocked to see that number bump a little bit higher, but it is such a big slate. And I think Poole does have 50-point upside tonight. I did see Klay Thompson got upgraded to questionable, but even so, without Curry, Wiggins isn't playing. I think Poole is in a fantastic spot. I'm surprised Curry played that last game. It was a back-to-back, and the first leg of that back-to-back, he did get hurt and go to the locker room. And if you played DFS a lot, you knew that happened, and he came back. So I don't know if he re-aggravated something similar or if it was just a freak thing that he got hurt again. But I was kind of hoping that was going to be the Jordan Poole night, and it wasn't. So I like Poole tonight against Philly. I like that mid-range call quite a bit. One more guy who's just a little bit pricey I'll throw in there is I'm willing to go back to Julius Randle. I did just write him up for the expert survey. 4 straight games with a usage rate over 30%. He scored 30-plus real points in 3 of the last 4. Jalen Brunson was in a walking boot, and the next day he played, and he crushed against Chicago. Somehow, I don't know. Like, it's magic. That walking boot must go for like $3 million on eBay. It probably cures everything. I don't know. I don't know how he did it.
I will say, as somebody who's messed up their ankle a lot, and then also just like had so many problems with my small man syndrome and ego when I was young and short, that like, and I played a lot of basketball, right? And so everybody else was tall. That got to me. And so something that a lot of people don't realize about ankles is like, you always just want to like, tough it out. It's not a big deal, blah, blah, blah. But with ankles, you really just want to be as off them as physically possible until you can walk and run perfectly. And then as soon as you can walk and run normally, that's when you start pushing through the pain and when you get your limp, when you don't have that limp anymore. And so it actually does wonders for even a minor ankle injury to just secure it, get off of it, don't put any weight on it, and that'll help your recovery process quite a bit until you're at the stage where, oh yeah, no, I don't have to compensate at all. I can just deal with this minor amount of pain and run normally. And then you get to the point of strengthening it. So the boots and the crutches, even on a minor ankle injury, it's the play. It's the play. You don't want to be limping yourself around. You wait until you can go fully normal range of motion, and that's when you start pushing it. So kudos to the Knicks and Jalen Brunson for handling that one properly and letting him have a big game because of it.
I was laughing because there's a Twitter picture floating around the day before the game they played where he was a game time decision. The Knicks had like a formal or a dance or something, and Brunson was in the picture with a couple other Knicks players and their significant others, and he had the walking boot on in the picture. The girls were in like, they were dressed up and everything. I'm like, this guy's not playing tonight. Sure as hell he played, and he played well, and he was winning GPP and some single entry stuff with Randall. But what I was getting at is Brunson coming back didn't affect Randall. He's just playing really good basketball finally for the Knicks, and he's coming in pretty low owned tonight as well. So I'm willing to ride this heater until the wheels fall off, and maybe the wheels won't fall off. Maybe this will be the Julius Randle that we get for the rest of the year. I don't know. Plenty of options in that mid range right there, TJ. So
sub 10% ownership. I like that play quite a bit. I think Jalen Brunson's actually too cheap as well. He's a guy that's been cheaper on DK, more expensive on FanDuel, but his price has gone down a little bit on FanDuel now. And I think he is absolutely in play in this one as well. Nice short show today. People are going to get through this one nice and quick, so I think we can give a free week away of RG Premium. Who do you think is going to be the highest scorer on this slate? Now, don't get me wrong. Right now, we're projecting it to be Luka Doncic by a fairly wide margin, but guess what? Most people are probably guessing Luka Doncic or Trae Young tonight. So if you want to be, your tiebreaker is the exact amount of points, but if you want to be different, drop another player, and whoever picks the closest to who will score the most fantasy points tonight on this 10-game slate with the closest amount of points is going to win a free week of RG Premium. Comment that on the FanDuel Friday YouTube page. You can comment that on the FanDuel Friday RotoGrinders page. Make sure you leave your RG username in there as well, and then we are going to be able to get you that free week of RG Premium. So make sure you make your guesses in there. Wish, do you have any parlay bets or any odds standing out to you early in the day before we get out of here?
Let me see here. Nothing. I kind of like a Congo to double at plus 100 on FanDuel. I know he's chalk. I know we talked about Nasri, but if he does play like 30-ish minutes, and if you go into Court IQ, he is one of the quote unquote right plays for a reason. So I think that even money, that's a decent bet. He's like Capella light, like he just does.
What do you think about the strategy of just dropping a big bet on that today and then fading a Congo in tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your style. I like to hedge myself in those certain situations. Maybe not drop it on the double-double. Maybe put a little bit on the double-double and then bet his points and boards separately as well as straight bets. And there's a chance that maybe, you sweep the board there. Maybe he has a double-double and, like a 10 and 10 and doesn't get any blocks or steals, and he's fine. And maybe Naz Reid crushes, right? And you play him. So I think that's a good way. Hedging yourself with your entire portfolio, wherever you can get resources to hedge yourself a little bit and still have upside to win a lot of money, is the way I like to attack it. So great call on that.
And I think that'll basically do it for this week's FanDuel Friday. We'll be back later in the day. Dre and I will be breaking down this NFL slate for this weekend, courtesy of FanDuel. So thanks so much for tuning into this one, everyone. Make sure to drop your guess for the highest score on today's slate. How many points alongside your RG username, and you will be entered to win a free week of RG Premium. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit the like button for us as well. Subscribe, hit that little notification bell. It does wonders for us on our side of things. So we thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next Friday for some more basketball. Peace.